G'day. It was a bittersweet Constructors' Championship win today for McLaren, with tensions rising between the team's two star drivers. Let's delve deeper. The pair came together on the first lap, with Lando passing his teammate in a move that Oscar deemed not very team-like. Both the stewards and the team looked at the incident and both declared no further action. And while the incident did cause some damage to Lando's car, which you can see here, it didn't stop him wrapping up third place with Oscar in fourth. Here's what I know a lot of you thought when you saw the post-race celebration when the McLaren team were up there on the podium celebrating their Constructors' Championship win. There was no Oscar. Why was that? Well, he was actually out doing his media commitments. He came out of the FIA garage, and at that point it was clear he wasn't happy, and neither was his manager, Mark Webber. It's fair to say that when a team wins a World Constructors title, it should be great for everybody, but there's no doubt that Oscar was biting his tongue post-race and wasn't happy with the team's decision. Now, of course, when you get two drivers coming together who are vying for a championship and one has an advantage, there's no way that both of those drivers could end up happy. Did the team celebrate again with Oscar? Yes, and I'll get to that a little later. Oh, and thanks to Holofly for sponsoring this video. Picture this. You arrive in Singapore for the GP, the Wi-Fi's terrible, you can't get online, and you don't have time to wait in line for a local SIM. But with a Holofly eSIM, you'll be connected as soon as you arrive at Changi Airport. With Holofly, you can get unlimited data, not only for Singapore, but for over 200 destinations around the world. Simply go to their website or app to select your plan ahead of time. You can personalise it from 1 to 90 days, so you only pay for the days that you need. And after you purchase your eSIM, you will instantly receive a QR code to install your new eSIM before you travel, making use of your current Wi-Fi. All that's left to do is activate your eSIM when you arrive in Singapore. No hidden costs, no hassle. It's that easy. Stay up to date with all things F1, navigate your way around the city, and stay in touch with your friends and family. Get your Holofly eSIM today by clicking the link in the description below and use my code KIMELMAN for a special discount. Now, Oscar, before going into the TV media pen to be answering questions from journalists, did actually get dragged into the garage where I think his team was talking to him about what he should be saying in the media. Mark Webber was at this race and he was at the track until quite late tonight, but I'm unsure if he actually spoke to Oscar prior to him going in the media pen. There was some talk amongst some journalists as to whether Oscar could speak frankly and honestly about the incident, but it seems like he's just taken the safe line and played things down, as Lando did in the press conference. He mentioned that Max actually gave him a little push and that caused him to go into Oscar. Lando was quite late to go into the press conference, with these two having to handle the first 4 or 5 minutes on their own. But then afterwards, it was down to pit lane for a group team celebration shot. This was the first time that we saw Oscar and Lando post-race. And have a look. It was all very amicable. In fact, it was very, very professional. And I think you probably would expect that from both of the guys. If the shoe was on the other foot, I have no doubt that Lando would have reacted in the same way. But there's no doubt that Oscar left that track tonight feeling he'd been hard done by. Let's go to the celebration now. They did a standard photo with the team. And then the second one, Oscar was the first to pull out the champagne. But prior to that, I did focus quite sharply on Oscar to see whether there were any signs of his real emotions. But Oscar is a very calm sort of fella, and it's often hard to get a read on the youngster. There was a good turnout of photographers and video people there, and it was a very calm celebration. Normally, everybody piles in, but the team were very diligent in keeping people back. And then at one point, we had a Haas car actually pass in front of the photographers, and one of the mechanics said, when the McLaren team gave him a big round of applause, he said, "That's one of the biggest cheers we've ever heard." There's no doubt, though, that tensions are rising, and Oscar still has a 22-point lead. Lando took 3 points out of that tonight. There are 6 races to go, and I don't think Mark Webber is going to be telling Oscar to play the team game for the rest of those 6 races. I think it's going to be gloves off. He'll be pushing Oscar to do everything to win that championship. I spoke to a couple of people in the team tonight, and they suggested that the gloves definitely will be off. And papaya rules, well, probably that's gone by the wayside too. And late in the evening, after all had been done in McLaren, I did catch Oscar in the back of the garage having a chat with his engineer, Tom Stallard. And just before he left, he was given a hug by one of the gearbox technicians in the team. One thing's for sure, Oscar is very calm and measured in public. What goes on behind closed doors? You and I won't know, but I think we're in for some fascinating scenarios as we get closer to the end of the year. But that drama aside, McLaren needs to be congratulated for a dominant season. To wrap it up with 6 races to go is no mean feat. And certainly Zach Brown and Andreas Stella were pumped over the top tonight as they celebrated with their team. Of course, that wasn't the only celebration. George Russell won tonight, and it was stunning to see. He was, after the race, hot and sweaty, as you can imagine. Oh, by the way, all of the drivers, I was told, wore that cooling vest, but they didn't have to connect these 2 pipes to the cooling unit. That was up to them. And the cars that they raced in this race are the heaviest that have ever raced in Formula One. If you were watching the live telecast of Parc Ferme, you might have seen me showing some pictures on my camera to George's girlfriend Carmen. It was just pure fluke that Carmen ended up standing next to me because I got there first. Anyway, when I saw her there and I saw George spot her, I was ready. Not the first time I've been next to her in Parc Ferme, and it was a great moment for her and her boyfriend. And while McLaren's celebration took place in pit lane, Mercedes chose to have theirs out the front of their hospitality suite, which was delayed because they realised that most of the media would be down at McLaren. Fair call. When George actually arrived at the front of the group, he realised there were no trophies. So he said, well, do I have to get everything myself? And he nipped around the back to grab what we thought were the trophies, but it turned out he actually grabbed a bottle of champagne and started spraying it over everybody. That was the cue for this woman to open her bottle and spray everybody from that position. Interestingly, no Toto Wolff. I think he'd left, but Carmen did join the celebrations, although a row or 2 behind everybody else. Lewis Hamilton won with Mercedes at this track in 2018, and tonight after the race, he actually went out to the fence to greet a whole lot of fans who'd stayed back. And another thing, when we go to the likes of Australia and Monza, all these gaps between the fencing have to be blocked by security guards and sometimes even by wooden panels. Not the case in Singapore. They're completely open and there are no security anywhere. It's just a mark of respect, a bit like Japan, where that's not even required. And I like that about Singapore. Now, did you see Martin Brundle's grid walk today? He came across what he thought was Lewis Capaldi, who is a popular singer. Well, it wasn't Lewis. It was instead his brother. And I caught up with him, Aidan, after the race. And a lovely fella. By fluke, I'd seen a post on Instagram talking about it. But yeah, he was a guest of F1 and had the time of his life and happens to be a fan of my YouTube videos too. I want to go back to qualifying now, and I noticed that Isaac Hadjar, after he had finished his quali session, came out of the car looking rather despondent, looking up at a screen, and then after he'd done the media pen, he came out looking very dejected, and the outward appearance is that Isaac really wears his heart on his sleeve, and when he's let himself down, he certainly isn't afraid to show that. He was actually with his girlfriend this weekend. This is the first time I've seen Lauren Fitzsimmons at the track. She spent most of the weekend in the company of Liam Lawson's girlfriend Hannah St John. In fact, it was a bevy of girlfriends at the track with Rebecca Donaldson. Oh, and have a look at this. A lot of you picked up on my post that she, on her bag, which was a Charles & Keith bag, which is a Singapore brand, had a unicorn. Yes, this is Sparkles, which if you go back to the last race in Baku where Carlos got himself a podium, he was wearing a helmet with a Sparkles sticker on it. This was actually crocheted by a fan, and she found Rebecca and gave it to her as she came in. I think it was on quali day. And still on the subject of girlfriends, Lando's girlfriend Maggie was with him, and my biggest post of the weekend was nothing to do with cars. It was this picture of the pair on the hospitality deck prior to qualifying. Now, Alonso had a reasonable day out today, finishing 8th. I had to laugh because about halfway through the race, he came on the radio and said, "If you speak to me every lap, I will disconnect the radio." A man not to be trifled with. I noticed during one of the practice sessions, I was in pit lane and I saw Jos Verstappen just in the general part of the garage, and I thought that's a little odd. And I went back and checked my photos from years gone by, and certainly Jos has only ever been, in my time, in the little area at the back of the garage where guests are allowed to be. But since Christian Horner's left, Jos is now allowed into Max's side of the garage. I don't know who's made that happen, but that is what's happening at present. Another thing that grabbed my attention while I was in pit lane was the Mercedes crew all had brand new Adidas shoes on. Obviously that's some sort of sponsorship deal, but it looked quite odd because they were wearing dark coloured shorts and long pants with pristine white shoes. Now, I think you'll like this story. Rayhan here decided he'd propose to his girlfriend at the track. I was out there photographing. He actually contacted me and asked me to shoot it, saying it's a surprise. We met, they got a selfie with me, and then I said, well, let's get a picture of you. And when I walked back to take the photo, I said to a passerby, could you do me a favour? He's about to propose. Could you please keep the people away? Which this young lady did, and I didn't get a chance to thank her, so thank you very much for that. But it was a delightful thing to witness at an F1 track. Did you see the rear wing of the Williams cars this weekend? I only spotted it Saturday when I was in pit lane. But I thought it was quite a novel idea. Of course, that rear wing led to both of the Williams cars being disqualified from qualifying. They started from 19th and 20th. And if you're wondering how they pick which one started 19th and which one started 20th, well, you have to understand that qualifying times were dismissed. They couldn't do it based on that. So they go back to the previous session, which was FP3. And the fastest time there was set by Alex Albon. So he went 19th. If you've never been to the Singapore Grand Prix, I can tell you it is a fair eye-opener. For a start, the heat is crazy. And it drops a few degrees at night, but really it's still very sweaty. So hats off to those drivers for getting around that 90-plus minute race today in one piece. And I think you'll find that the response, I spoke to a couple of drivers, trainers today, who said that their drivers were more than happy with the effects of that cooling vest. But certainly we had no pictures like we've had in the past with Liam Lawson here or Max Verstappen or any of the other drivers, Lance Stroll, Nico Hulkenberg, looking absolutely smashed. Although I did note out in Parc Ferme, the drivers actually sat on the ground, Lando and George Russell. And George actually removed himself at one stage to go and take that vest off. And one of the trainers I spoke to said that whilst the driver might lose anywhere from 2 to 4 kilograms in sweat, a lot of that goes into the weight of the race suit. So they may not actually weigh on the scales when they do their post-race weigh-in much less than what they started, but their body weight would certainly be lower and the suit would be a little bit heavier. Now, having spent 12 hours at the track today in crazy heat, I'm probably going to go and get some rest now. So in the meantime, can I ask you to like and subscribe if you haven't already done so? Much appreciated. And for a whole lot of extra content and merch and stuff, this is where you need to look. Thanks for watching.
And stay passionate.